This episode of our This Week in XR podcast is sponsored by Zapper. Zapper is one of the world's leading XR companies. Over the past 12 years, they've won numerous awards for memorable campaigns. They've democratized AR by making tools and SDKs that anyone can use. And they created ZapBox, the world's most affordable mixed reality headset. Most recently, Zapper worked with Unilever to create an enhanced QR code called Accessible QR, which enables packaged goods to speak to the blind and partially sighted. If you're thinking XR, give the team at Zapper a call or visit zapper.com to see how they can help you on your XR journey. Good morning, everybody. I'm Charlie Fink with Ted Shilowitz and Rony Abovitz. It's the AI XR podcast, and it's March 7th, 2025. Our guests today are two programmers from South by Southwest, our old friend, Blake Kammerdiner, who's in charge of the XR exhibition and the XR conference track, and Katie McCall, who's overseen AI. So we'll hear from them. Ted and I are headed to South by Southwest. It's sort of an annual ritual along with Augmented World Expo in June.
Yep.
But it's great to see everybody. There's so much to do at South by Southwest, both personally and professionally. I'm booked wall to wall. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's a good time. It's fun. Yeah.
All right, so let's get to the news. Google is launching a major update called AI Mode for premium subscribers. And it will give you answers rather than links.
Yeah.
If successful, it would be a spectacular disruption to Google's click-based advertising model. So I think they don't have any choice. They're standing there watching the train come down the tracks, and they have to embrace that. Also, I'm not sure humans are going to be doing all the clicking going forward. So I think their thinking is, let's go head to head with OpenAI, get everybody to subscribe, and give them a suite of services. So without advertising and click advert, $260 billion a year, they're really going to have to rethink their business model.
And there's a precursor to this that's been going on for the last few months. When you do any kind of Google search and you opt in, there's like a little pre-AI thing that gives you sort of a partial answer, and then you can say more and it'll open that up. So have they discussed what this piece is, how this is going to be different? It's more robust. It's a different choice.
It's eliminating the option to just go to links.
Interesting.
It is just, and apparently it can give very long and deep answers.
Yeah, I have no doubt.
Yeah. So I don't know what the interface is going to be. I threw that up on the on my Forbes column, just taking a screenshot of what's there.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like a whole prompt window and response window. They're not showing anything else in those images.
Yeah, so it's a UI change. It's kind of a
I mean, these images that they put up don't have any links in them. They're all answers inside of a conversation window.
I mean, what's interesting? This is could put the hurt on OpenAI and Perplexity and some others, because Google has huge reach. So the real question is the service good? If it's good enough, like good relative to like current OpenAI Perplexity, then what's the reasoning why you would then also do the other guys? So it's going to be like, the reason they went search is they were so much better, but it's not that obvious that they're so much better than OpenAI or Perplexity right now. That's going to be the key.
100%. So Mobile World Congress wrapped in Barcelona. I guess there were no big breakthrough announcements other than thinner smartphones, and there were a lot of attention to wearable AI, obviously. Interestingly, again, not based on sensors, which I thought was where we were going, like with a button or something that would be Bluetooth to your phone. But instead, people are thinking glasses are the platform for the sensors that enable AI to know where you are and what you're doing. So really interesting trends there. Project Muhan, I can't believe that's going to be its name, which is the fully included mixed reality headset that apparently has better better specs than the Apple Vision Pro and will be way less. We've been talking about this a lot. It's the Google, Qualcomm, Samsung collaboration, and that's using the new operating Android XR operating system.
Yeah.
I don't understand this at all. The Apple Vision Pro is not experiencing slow growth because of its specs. It is a fine piece of computer hardware, um, albeit way too expensive. That said, it doesn't have enough content. And unless they've developed some use case, some consumer use case that none of us knows about, God knows I wish they would, somebody would, um, that thing is going to end up moldering on somebody's desk drawer right next to the Vision Pro. And I don't know why they think, making it cost $2,000 less is going to result in a different fate.
So let's ask Rony, this question: how much of a long game is Google/Android playing here, and Apple playing here, and Qualcomm playing here, and all the players? How much is this just this continual slow burn? I mean, it's essentially the same kind of UI interface experience. Now, hopefully it'll be physically lighter, so it'll be a little more comfortable to wear for extended periods of time. But what's the plan here, Rony? You know from the inside out how long this stuff takes.
I think what you're seeing is call it time lags. What you're seeing here is the output of a meeting from 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And a meeting before the Vision Pro shipped. And then a lot of excitement around how we're going to beat the Vision Pro as its first year came out and all the news buzz. And then we're like, oh, they're late on delivery and late on shipping. And now it's 2025, it's March. And they were like, their projections were not,
they're fighting last year's war.
No, the projections were like Vision Pro 2 is out and we got to do this and that and all this stuff's happening. And they're playing this like turn-based game, but the opponent's not even on the field anymore. Like the game's like moved on. So it's like this slow cycle time. And that's what we're seeing. Like this should come out like 23, or 6 months after Vision Pro. Like this very slow response is like, but the machine's going, the investments are made, the teams are like, let's go do it. And at some point, some CEO is going to be the bad person and take it in the back alley. And I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad product, but it's not all the things everyone learned about Vision Pro are not found in this version that's coming out. That's the thing. Like the thing that will actually unlock the market is, I think we've all agreed on this, is going to be much lighter. It's going to have like some full field of view AR. It's going to have really well integrated AI. It's going to be something that this thing isn't, because this is a 5 year ago idea.
Yeah. So your 2030 projection is still on track. We don't have to move the goalpost on that for another 3 or 4 years.
That's yeah. Can I just say one thing really quick? There's a brilliant gentleman I worked with, who's part of the Boston Consulting Group Henderson Institute. One of the old guard guys there, just really really brilliant. And that's like their think tank, really innovation think tank, and like trendline think tank. And one of the things we talked about was like, stop predicting dates, predict future states. So don't put a time on it, but describe when certain events happen and certain conditions are met, this will be what happens. So that is actually a much better predictive tool. Like we should talk about that on the show, but the idea of like a state prediction. So you never know when in time all those factors come together and precipitate something. But when they do, then the thing we've been talking about, what that'll happen in 2030, is probably is much more helpful to talk about the things that must come together. And when they do come together, all those factors, then the kind of critical mass and market acceptance happens.
Yeah,
I think that's the real key here, I think.
Yeah, this goes right into the thesis that science fiction, both literature, popular media, and creationism are actually the best harbingers of the future, the best proof points of people thinking creatively about what will the future look like when all these things kind of come together. And then you get to the Star Trek language of a giant screen, a viewport, the Bluetooth headset that Lieutenant Uhura wears, the communicator, the flip phone, et cetera, et
Well,
cetera, et
and
cetera. Right?
snow crash. I mean,
Totally.
presence, in the physical world, even when you are digital,
Yes.
which
Yes.
is a concept, that Living Cities was pursuing. I understand they're not pursuing it anymore because it was going to be too hard. Was putting sensors in the real world that would allow people in the virtual world to have presence in places like the Notre Dame
Mhm.
Cathedral. And presumably, if you were wearing glasses inside of Notre Dame, you could see those people who were co-present with you. I mean, those are exciting,
Right.
exciting ideas about the future. But I think Living Cities and Matt Meisniks, who is a visionary, we're seeing too far into the future.
Well, it's always
So it,
hundreds of years, right? That's what the literature and media creates, is hundreds of years in the future when all these things come together. And there's so much science fiction media that points our way into all the things that we use, these ultra thin tablets, these things that have, transparency and clarity, and the idea of like video chat at scale, which we do now on a normalized regular basis on planet Earth here, 2020 to 2030, is all built on someone's idea of science fiction, right?
let me throw two things out though to support let something that we should keep bringing up here. This idea of state prediction, but there's a friend of mine who was actually an early backer of Mako Surgical when I started it. A guy named Rodney Brooks. He ran the artificial intelligence lab at MIT. Rodney was famous for a film called Fast, Cheap, and Out of Control, where he advocated these like small, crazy mobile robots. But he's also famous for being very right on AI and robotics, but wrong on timing. Although he was right with the Roomba, right? That iRobot was a company he also founded, and that turned out to be successful. But he was kind of like always talking about it. It was like just like when's it going to happen, and the humanoids and all this kind of stuff. And if you went to his lab in the 90s, you would see things that today Figure AI and Tesla are crowing about, but they were doing it like 25, 30 years ago. Just they were right, but there were a couple things missing. The other really good one is like Jensen, just hanging in there for
Mhm.
AI. It's
Sure.
going to happen. It's kind of like the metaverse, kind of like XR. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. And then boom. The difference between Jensen and the field we love, the XR field, is that he was making money selling GPUs and he was able to pivot into like the real scaling of AI. The problem with XR is somehow it takes tens of billions. I mean, I think Meta is definitely crossing the $100 billion spent line with no end in sight. Like, do they have to spend another 100 billion? Is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? So the time prediction is a lot harder than the state prediction. And I think that's wearing thin on some people. I can imagine Tim Cook yelling at people like, "Do I got to spend 150 billion until we figure out what's going on?" So what could be sad is all the big players waiting for someone else to do it.
Mm.
And the real question is, does Mark have the staying power to just keep burning money until it all happens and everyone else trails him?
If
I don't
I
even know if
said
he's
this
got the
last week,
appetite for that. I don't
I
know.
said this last week. If Meta walked away from the $100 billion investment and just sold it for parts, their stock would go up.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, the 100 billion represents less than 5% of their valuation. So, the people who were complaining about it stopped complaining because even nicking off 5%, they still like the stock. So there was a big metaverse raise. A company called Peer raised $10.5 million for a slightly different approach to a kind of realistically looking metaverse. I put some pictures of it up in the Forbes column. But it's going to leverage AI, and they got $10.5 million. There were a lot of financings this week. We Level $5.7 million from Bitcraft. They're a sandbox for AAA open sandbox games and other kinds of multiplayer games. Dubformer, they do dubbing for, among other companies, Paramount. The dubbing business has just gone completely AI. There's a little company called Noctil. They have AI powered sound design. So, things are continue both on the high end and on the lower end of AI to percolate along. And, there's a sign Anthropic is, going to get, a valuation that allows them to raise hundreds of billions of dollars, raise billions and billions of dollars. And it's going to be incredibly valuable, but I don't know where it's going other than, um, other than Amazon. And we'll see. I think they must have something to do with the Amazon Alexa upgrade, which hasn't been widely distributed yet, but could be a very compelling use case. So I see
Well,
Blake and Katie are here. So
okay.
let's get them in. I just wanted a lot of little news items this week that bore some mention because there's always, when you see this many announcements all at once, you're looking at a pattern. Blake,
Hey, Blake,
Hello, man. How are
it,
y'all?
it's
welcome
our
back.
it's our annual gathering, and this year we're adding Katie. Welcome.
Thank you.
Katie, did I use your name wrong, or is it Perera or McCall?
It was McCall. I got married. It's Perera. I've been at South by for 11 years, so my email is both.
Well, great. It's great to have you. We're looking forward to talking about the AI programming, as well as what to expect from XR. I think, Blake, this must be our third or fourth time doing this.
Yeah.
Ted and I go to South by every year. It's just one of those events where the tribe is there, the content is there. There's so much to do, so much to talk about. You arrive with a packed schedule and you don't do any of it. You do other things that serendipity throws in your way. And one of the most serendipitous things, of course, is the XR exhibition.
Yeah.
And these are also pieces, it has trended. I'd be interested in Ted's thoughts on this as well. It has trended every year more and more toward location-based experiences, art experiences, and away from things that might be commercial.
Yes and no. It's really like, I mean, we're all about discovery. So that's like the core of what we do is really to try and discover new talent. And so maybe they'll be commercial later,
Uh-huh.
at some point. But yeah, really like it's all about that discovery of new artists and new ideas. And so that's really kind of where we like to focus.
Well, Blake,
Uh,
let's ask you what you're excited about this year because you also always lean into the latest hardware and the latest use cases for different devices year over year as they come out and start to find, their value points.
Yeah.
So what makes this year's XR exhibition interesting and exciting to you personally as someone who's been, in it day to day?
Um, it's hard to say because I always like to say that the whole program is what I'm excited about. That's why I put it together as I did. But we do have some really cool stuff. I've been trying to get a dome into the exhibition for years, so this year we have a full dome
Nice.
we put up. It's pretty exciting. It's going to be a project called Resolution, Symphonic Rhapsody for the Soul. So it's one project showing in there, and it's a music-based project. It's like a visual album for the Polyphonic Spree most recent album. It's amazing. People are going to love it. So I'm really excited about that, about kind of that group dynamic. One of the other new things is also projection based, called Proof, as if proof were needed, and that's going to be multi-user. They're tracking where people are on this kind of grid on the floor and where they're at, and kind of what entices them to move from place to place will determine what's being shown on the screen. So that's really exciting for people to see. We do have several Apple Vision Pro projects, some in the video-based area like Currents, some like Cosmos. Through the Lens is the more mixed reality kind of version, as well as there's another one called The Last Practice. So I'm excited to kind of see how people play with that in this group setting, and now that it's been out for a year, and being able to show some kind of different use cases there. In that art-based kind of arena, if you will. Then there's just some of the like really exciting like people who are going to be here. Nani De La Pena's here
I
with.
was going to bring her up. She's my colleague and I suppose boss at ASU,
Yeah.
and one of our really successful students, Cameron Kostopoulos,
Yeah.
is back with a new experience. He won a jury award actually the year that I was a judge for A Body of Mine, which is now available on the Quest, and he is the perfect disciple for Nani
Yeah.
because he is so into that first person walk in somebody else's shoes, sort of empathy as a goal.
Yep.
And empathy as the intent of the piece.
And this
And
project really like it follows right in those footsteps, as well as you can see his growth as an artist.
he's using haptics
So
again.
good. He's using haptics. Yeah, it's called In the Current of Being, and we're so excited to have him back with this piece.
Yeah, he is terrific. And Nani has a piece which her work is always among the best work.
Yeah.
Now I see Paul Raphael is speaking from Felix
Yeah.
and Paul.
Yeah.
I saw him there last year. Obviously, he's part of the XR tribe. He's speaking, so it's sort of a good. Because is Felix and Paul exhibiting this year?
They're not exhibiting this year. No,
So,
we just have him in the conference. Yeah.
so how many XR panels are there in the conference?
We have 23 in the track, and then we're gonna have two on the main stages, the featured sessions. So we're gonna have Charlie, your session with John Carafin, which I'm super excited
Me
about.
too.
And then we're gonna have an ILM session as well, kind of going over what ILM's
Oh,
been doing.
right. I saw Vicky Dobbs-Beck, who's the head of ILMX Lab, is going to be with us.
Yeah, absolutely. And with some of her team, I'm excited about that session. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
When is that? I don't even have that on my schedule.
That's 10 a.m. on Monday the 10th.
Yikes.
Being
It's
able to
good
pull
that
out
they
the
tape
schedule.
these things because, like I said, you have things on your schedule, things come up. Although I will say, for those of you who are listening and going to South by Southwest, remember 48 hours before the event to click on South by Southwest Express Pass
Yeah.
in the description on the schedule, either in the app or on the web, because if you don't, they will not let you in. They don't care who you are. They don't care if you're press. It makes me very nostalgic for those days before the pandemic when South by Southwest did reserved seats for the press. But now we're just like everybody else.
We're egalitarian. That's what we are. That's what we do.
Yes. Yes.
I will say you can still get in without an express pass. We're holding a percentage of each room for those express passes. So if you don't get one, you can still come try and line up and get in.
Right. The popular panels have enormous lines. That's
Yeah.
just South by Southwest. The ones that you want to see, you can count on lots of other people wanting to see.
Enjoy the lines. Meet the people next to you.
That's right.
That's
The
part of
social
the networking.
discovery of people who have self-selected South by Southwest.
That's exactly right.
I actually think that's a big part of the spirit of South by Southwest because there's a lot of friction now in attending. It used to be Austin was cheap and, it was like there were lots of bars and you could go in and find your way to one. But now the bars are like people, hanging out the doors and needing to make reservations everywhere. And it's just become a very high class affair. So, I mean, you have people who are affluent, people who work for affluent companies. These are generally kind of senior people because, it costs 5 or 10 grand between transportation and the cost of a platinum badge. Uh, and it's amazing that despite all of that friction and the 500-night hotel rooms that require a minimum 3 night stay, in spite of all that friction, it's gotten bigger every year.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's not only about what we're doing, but it's about those people continuing to come. It's about the speakers being here. It's about the networking that's happening, and I think that's what's continued to really like drive that value. And I really think you can make it worth it.
So one more thing before we go to Katie, Ted and Rony may have, but this is my thing, and I was thinking about it actually as I was before we even started the podcast today. So every year you look through all the panel pickers, you have a couple of features that you choose either from among them or among the world that you travel in all year, looking at stuff and finding stuff. But the panel picker is sort of like a big surge of submissions, and yes, it's based on popularity and social presence and all that, but it's also just based on what fits in the general theme of the year. So, what is the theme that emerged as you went through this whole process of looking at content and looking at panel picker? There must be kind of a pattern that emerges from looking at so much information about the vertical.
There's a lot of patterns, honestly. There's several different patterns that you'll find because we have so many different pillars that we're looking at. We're looking through film, we're looking through music, based content, tech content, all of that. There's a bunch of different themes. I think this year on the XR front, we had a lot of interest in some. Actually, it was like almost going back to some of the core thoughts, like space. Like, how are you using space? There was so much space that came in. NASA's going to be around a whole lot. Of course, AI is still a big component of that. Like, how are we using AI ethically? How are we using it smart and to make our workflows better? There's still a lot of that. Sometimes they'll go away from year to year. Last year, AI was a big theme. This year, it's also a big theme, but I think the kind of tone of it changed a little bit. Last year, there was a lot of like speculation and fear, and I think this year there's a lot of like, no, we can use this right. How are we doing that? And I think that's super interesting. So on the XR front, there's that, and again, still there's still like kind of some of that core, like how can we tell stories correctly using XR? Like, how can we not just be like, oh, it's a gimmick or whatever, or like, but like Felix and Paul's panel. It's about how do you take IP and translate it for virtual reality, because you have to think about it. You have to be smart about that. So I think those are some of the themes that you'll find out. But I really think one of the beauties of South by is with the bulk of the content is you can find your thread. And that's one of the really interesting things about really exploring our schedule.
I do like the fact, before we get to the AI part of it, which is no doubt going to have an impact this year.
Yeah, Katie, we see you there.
I do like the fact that you are continuing to experiment and lean more into larger scale XR exhibition oriented things where large groups or medium sized groups of people can get in, as opposed to one at a time in headset, which has always been this throttling challenge of, very few mad people. And then you've got the VIPs and the judges and the regular folks that want to see XR.
It's the curse of location based entertainment, right?
Right.
Too many seats most of the time, too few seats when you really need them.
Yeah. Right. No, I really do like. I was super pleased with being able to bring in more multi-user stuff, more even headset based stuff like interactive projection and immersive projection stuff. So I'm really excited about that as well.
It's a good.
And of course, the Golden Key one last year.
Yeah.
That was a total AI and projection and multimedia.
A lot of people got to see it.
Yeah, exactly. And it was at the Brooklyn Museum. So I think that's kind of their exhibition plan for it, is to go to museums and other places.
Yeah, and they were at Phi Center at least for a while there as well, up in Montreal, which is just a fantastic installation.
People are lucky if they get to see it, because it is a real glimpse of the future of media. I think we're going to be drowning in synthetic content. So that was a great example. Katie, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
It's the AI XR podcast. We should have had you go first.
Alphabetical, it's fine.
You said you were with South by Southwest for 9 years?
This will be my 11th event.
Wow. So you must have, what were you doing before you got tagged as the AI person?
I was working on our tech industry content for a while, so kind of nice transition there. And then before that, got to work on all of our social impact content. So all of the feel goods of people changing the world, which we still have a lot of, but moved into the tech space a little bit more.
Interesting. That's great. And I guess we can start with the same question I asked Blake. You don't have an exhibition, of course.
Right.
And AI is, other than the cinematic niche, is not a terribly visual thing. As I know as a writer, because I write about AI, and there's no pictures. And with XR, there's lots of pictures. There's gear, there's equipment, there's visuals. Many of them are films, and you can write about them as, legitimate cinematic experiences. So in the case of AI, first of all, how many panels are in the AI conference track?
So there's 36 in the conference track, but then of course, like Blake said, it's in XR, it's in every track of programming that runs. So AI is going to be a little bit ubiquitous in everywhere this year at South by.
It probably is a lot like South by in 1994 or 1993, and everybody talking, it's going to be digital, it's going to be
Yes.
internet, someday it's even going to be mobile. And now, of course, that's everything. You would be ridiculous to have a
We were
digital
called
track.
we were called the multimedia conference back then, and now that's our entire event. So yeah, to some degree, that's definitely true of AI.
So did you see, again, the question I asked Blake was, did you see a pattern emerge from both the panels that were submitted and the more high level stuff?
Yeah, it's interesting, and I actually think it's similar to what Blake saw. So last year was the first year we had a dedicated standalone track for artificial intelligence. Prior to that, it had been integrated into tech industry. It didn't quite have its own standalone industry. So last year, it felt like we were riding that AI hype cycle, right? We were having these theoretical conversations like what AI might mean for society. Can it really do that thing that it says it can do, or that everybody's afraid it can do, or really excited for? And there's definitely still those theoretical conversations like, what does our world look like with AI? Um, but the track this year, I feel like, has shifted towards the practical. How are businesses actually implementing the technology? What roadblocks are they running into? What is the technology actually capable of today, and what's right now being built for tomorrow? So it feels like as a society, we've kind of settled into, yes, AI exists. It is going to be part of our everyday life. And now, what is that day-to-day impact going forward? And I think the track mirrors that settling in from the peak of the wave.
Interesting. Do you think it's mostly? I looked through it. It looked like a mix of sort of high science and compute and consumer applications.
I would agree with that. So my goal with the track is to really cover the actual technology, what's being built, what's happening, and then I've let my colleagues like Blake and others take it out of my track and say, how does this impact our industry? What is the impact on healthcare? What's the impact for filmmakers? And so tried to stick to the technology, the software that's being built, and how that's going to change for businesses, tech industry, those kinds of things.
So what are the highlights for you for this year? Like, what are the ones that are getting the most buzz, the most excitement, the ones that you and your staff are the most excited about? What is getting you buzzed up about the next few days?
Yeah, it's a great question. There are two sessions about emotions and AI. One is about specifically love connections. It's got four researchers from universities on it. And I think it's such a South by session, right? How we're talking about love and connection, and can we actually have relationships with machines, which is one of those hypotheticals people keep talking about. There's been some articles written about it. But then the other one is how are AI technologies actually interpreting emotions and taking that and kind of having that output. So I'm excited about those two conversations. They run in parallel, but on different ends of the spectrum. I think we also were just talking about some simulated data on the XR front. I think that's a huge topic of how are we simulating data to feed AI models. And so I'm excited about that conversation, synthetic data. Um, and then again, this big bucket of use cases for business.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I was reading an interesting article in the New York Times about a week ago about a woman who built a relationship with her AI. She's married, and this is like her other sort of boyfriend that the husband is kind of somewhat okay with, and it's sort of like she's living a romance novel.
yeah,
But she lives it in a chat based environment, and it sort of took over her life. And it's even at this early stage, it's this sort of is that dystopian or utopian or somewhere in the middle kind of thing. It was an interesting
The
story.
Like the movie Her,
character
right?
AI is
It's her.
terrifying. It's terrifying.
it is. But it's also, there's so much opportunity with it. So I'm excited that we've got academics on that session. I feel like it's a little more grounded in the research and what's happening. And so it's called Love Machines, the Science of AI Companionship. So
Oh
I
my
think that
That's
God.
one,
fascinating.
I'm writing that down. That's a good one.
It,
Love machines. So I'm picturing from this conversation with you guys, and this is just probably my old-fashioned fantasy. I'm picturing Hugh and all you guys around a big conference table trying to figure out the big picture before you can drill down on the verticals.
You're not wrong. That
Yeah.
is quite literally what we spend 2 weeks doing, end of September, beginning of October. Once we've gotten all the submissions in from Panel Picker, gotten a chance to review them as a team, we sit down and debate content and say, what is the goal behind this track? Who's the audience for this track? What do we really want to hit home this year? The future is embodied in everything we do at South by. That's kind of, if we had one theme for the whole event, that's it. But what does the future of AI look like? I get to spend all summer just doing research on that. And then we sit down and make content selections.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, that's really cool. But you guys at South by have incredibly cool jobs, and needless to
Yes.
say, I'm very very envious. Blake in particular goes around and looks at, evaluates, and talks to everybody in the industry. That must be, by the way, a really fun time because now you're sort of just keeping touch with your friends and finding out what they're
That's
working
exactly
on.
right. It's so much fun. I was just talking yesterday with a colleague about how like one of the things we've been able to do is like build relationships with all of these artists and industry experts, and it is that whenever I travel and go around, it's like I'm going to have dinner with friends, and it just so happened that we're talking about, you know, cutting edge future technology and art, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm envious of the book guys, right? Because they get their favorite author. They read books and then they get their favorite authors. I mean, how awesome! How many people reading a book get to do that? So it's a very rarefied thing, and of course, there's also the whole social thing that goes on around the entire conference across tracks. So including sort of a big sort of hodgepodge of technology and culture on the show floor. I see Katie is nodding. Do you have some perspective on that?
No, I just think it's fascinating. We have the conference where we're having these conversations about technology. Then we have an expo floor that is just full of the latest technology, what to expect. I feel like there's so few places where you can get the thought leadership conversation, you get the demonstrations on a show floor, you get the art that Blake is putting together. And I just think it's so exciting to see all of that in one place and be able to kind of hop from place to place any given day or, day to day throughout the event.
I,
I had
I
a question for you guys. Music used to be the heart of South by, and how is it intersecting with both of you? Like, music and AI, music and XR, but just kind of the mythology of like you go down Sixth and you'll see Stevie Ray Vaughan playing in a little bar. Like, how is that real anymore, or is it just overwhelmed by all the other aspects? Like, does the soul of South by still live?
Yeah, I think so actually. Like, I know I still every year will stumble in, find a brand new favorite artist as I'm going around at night in the music festival. But on top of that, with the intersection, right? I hear that I program more music-based XR content than most of the other festivals, and it is something that I lean into. I think that it is so exciting to be able to see musicians explore a new way to express their art and kind of visually show in a different way than your standard music video and really like let people explore their music. I think that's always super exciting. So I have several music-based projects, always, at least I have for the last few years, and this year's no different. As well as, we saw Wristband is back with a new show
Yeah,
on Tuesday
wristband.
at the Palm Door on 6.
Yeah,
That's going to be a super
speaking of
fun
living
show.
cities and mixing the digital and physical world.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. So being able to integrate on both sides, right? So like on my show floor, being able to show musicians and what they're doing in XR, as well as going to the music festival and being able to see these like really amazing mixed showcases. It's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, and on the AI side, it's such an important conversation for artists of how they're protecting their IP, how they're creating with AI. So, of course, have artists that are really pro getting into AI, how it's helping them, but then making sure that we're protecting the creatives. That's been the heart of South by since we started. And so having those conversations about how they can think through this. I know there's a few artists on the Music Fest side that are using AI in their showcase. So excited about that piece. We have Holly Herndon speaking this year. She's one of the first artists who kind of really dove into all things AI and music. So trying to cover both sides of it. And it's really just the evolution of how South by and music have grown together.
Do
Just
you
like
have any full AI music artists at South by this year? Meaning, like, this may not even be a human being, but like, a session put on by an all AI group or AI robots or something, or is it too much? I think about like when people were doing sampling, and it was very controversial at the time. It was kind of like that's not real, and I think there's that same fight happening with AI, but AI is a little bit different. It's even more intense. But is there like a full? Could you go to a concert and there's just like speakers and a computer and it's just playing you like it's set? I mean, has that happened yet, or could that happen?
I don't know if it's happening this year, but I've actually been in several conversations in combination with our music head of our music festival with people who we've talked to about it. So we know that that is a thing and happening, and there are different ways that people are exploring it in interesting ways. I don't know if we have any showcases that are 100% full like that this year, but there have been discussions with people about these AI artists and the people behind them and what that looks like.
And we do have some digital twins in the conference this year. Helen Todd is going to be in a conversation with her own digital twin in the AI track. So excited about that.
It's interesting.
So before you guys on, last thing, Ted and Charlie, I want to we talk about predicting the future, but instead of time, I'll just make a state prediction. I think you're going to discover an artist that's not human, that's some AI thing at South by in some kind of garage indie session, and it's going to have a #1 hit on Billboard. I don't know when exactly it's going to happen, but it doesn't seem far away. Some A&R guy walk down and they'll be like, in some bar, and it'll be like something on a stage playing. He'll hear it or she'll hear it, and I go, let's sign that thing. And it's Columbia or who knows who, maybe it's a Sub Pop, and that artist
It'll
becomes like the Smashing Pumpkins or Nirvana or who knows what, and in charts.
it'll be Micah. She's actually been living in a server all this
True.
time,
Yeah,
creating
yeah,
music to amuse
true.
herself.
But it
That's
just seems like that's just if it happens anywhere, it should happen at South by first. So I'm going to put that on the table. I can't give you the date, but I'm sure it'll happen soonish.
Yeah, and we're seeing the precursors of that with synthetic beings performing mostly in Asia, right? That drive large audiences, and they're put up on big screens, and they're sort of connecting to that artificial character. So that's already a
Well,
thing.
we already have synthetic influencers like Lil
course.
Miquela
Yes.
and others.
Yeah, so this is already an established thing. My sort of last question, as we kind of get to our time window, is: are any of the big tech giants involved in South by, either on the XR front or the AI front or both, supporting these efforts? Like, where to, because we've seen waves of big tech kind of entering in these conferences and then pulling back away from them, and then they come back again. Where is the 2025 year in terms of these large multi-trillion-dollar valuation companies supporting these efforts in various forms, if at
I
all?
think on the AI side, we've got a great mix of big tech and then startups that are growing. So IBM is actually the track sponsor. So they're kind of the main supporter of the track. We've got Amazon is involved. Both Qualcomm and ARM are going to be at the event this year. So really excited to have kind of that larger presence of the people who are driving a lot of the investment behind the industry.
Right. Is that IBM talking quantum too, or are they?
Yeah, he's their CEO Arvind Krishna is going to be talking about where they're at right now with AI and then what he sees as next with quantum, which, like I said, South by is always about what's next. We're in the AI moment right now, and quantum is certainly where we see that kind of
Yeah, we
evolve.
do have a small quantum track actually as well. That's just going to be just focused on quantum, so it's going to be around.
It's great.
So here's a good wrap-up question for you guys. South by Southwest is a big business now. You have a lot of year-round employees, and again, a huge fan base that you've developed diligently over 30 years. Um, so, as a business, in addition to sitting around and having great creative conversations and helping artists and authors and scientists and musicians, um, are you using AI? Are you thinking about AI as a management tool, as a marketing tool, as a you know uh, CRM tool to help you deepen those relationships with your followers and all those things, I guess, that a regular business would do?
I think like any business, this is why the track programming the track is so interesting to me is we're at that balance of, the legal ramifications of using certain AIs to create marketing materials, for example. But I think it's definitely top of mind. It's something we've been exploring. Each of us kind of has a personal passion project, and then we can take it to the larger team. We are a large organization, but we're not that large. So we can say, hey, I've built this thing. I want to try and integrate it. So certainly trying to figure out how that kind of plays into our overall business strategy.
All the while keeping the idea of helping creatives achieve their goals in mind. So it's like always putting the creator first is always what we're doing whenever we're looking at any of these new ideas.
It's been great having you guys on the show. It's a fantastic conversation. I know I speak for Ted and myself, of course, when I say that we're really looking forward to our time in South by Southwest as we do every year. So I'll see you at the XR exhibition, Blake, Katie. I hope we have a chance to run into each other. And that's our show for this week, everybody. So thanks for listening. And we'll have our South by Southwest recap, as well as all the news and special guests next week. Have a good one, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.